Whenever I post anything about a crime committed by someone with a gun in a gun-free zone, one of the top responses I get is that the folks who decided it's a gun-free zone should be held liable for the violence. Well, lawmakers in Georgia have apparently heard you and listened. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is brought to you by Blackout Coffee Company. Blackout is a family-owned coffee roaster specializing in coffee, tea, and hot chocolate while also supporting veterans, the Second Amendment, and this channel. Plus, their partner roasts donate to some of your favorite gun rights groups directly. So to check them out, go to blackoutcoffee.com/libertydoll today. Alright folks, so there is a new bill that has been introduced in Georgia and it operates under the idea that private property owners can ban guns from their property if they so choose, but then they bear some of the responsibility, a lot of the responsibility for what happens there if violence breaks out and people can't defend themselves. Under HB 1364, property owners who forbid lawful concealed carry from their property would assume responsibility for the safety of their customers, which is kind of logical. This means they could be held liable for any injuries suffered by customers if they're unable to protect themselves on the premises, much like they'd be liable for slips and falls and any other misfortune that could befall a customer. After all, that is why business owners have liability insurance. I myself was required to have it when I had a private practice with an office, so I know it exists and what it covers. The bill summary says that it would amend current state law relating to general provisions regarding liability of owners and occupiers of land so as to provide that a person, business, or other entity that owns or legally controls a property and prohibits a lawful weapons carrier from possessing a concealed weapon on such property shall assume absolute custodial responsibility for the safety of such lawful weapons carrier from certain threats, to provide for definitions, to provide for related matters, to provide for applicability, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Blah, 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 blah. This law would extend to parking lots or any property a legal gun owner would need to cross or go through to properly store their weapon, which is a popular place to get mugged. It would also change state law around legal signage, requiring signs banning guns to also cite this law and post that the property owner is responsible for ensuring their safety and security while on premises. And it doesn't just apply to physical injury. It also covers property damage and theft, which I think is pretty smart. Section C, 1. Any lawful weapons carrier who is prohibited from carrying his or her weapon, including a concealed weapon, and who is injured, suffers bodily injury or death, or incurs economic loss or expense, property damage, or any other loss as the result of conduct of another person occurring on property where the lawful possession of weapons is prohibited, shall have a cause of action against the person, business, or other entity that owns or legally controls such property and causes such prohibition to occur. In addition to damages, the lawful weapons carrier shall be entitled to reasonable attorney's fees, expert witness costs, and other costs necessary to bring the cause of action. 2. To prevail in an action brought under this subsection, the plaintiff shall show by a preponderance of the evidence that a. the plaintiff was a lawful weapons carrier at the time of the incident giving rise to the action, b. the plaintiff was prohibited from carrying a weapon, including a concealed weapon, on the property where the incident occurred by the person, business, or other entity that owns or legally controls such property, and c. the prohibition provided for in subparagraph b of this paragraph was not required by state or federal law, but was imposed at the discretion of the defendant. 3. The statute of limitations for such an action shall be 2 years from the date of the occurrence giving rise to the damages, loss, or injury. Honestly, and you don't hear me say this very often about government regulation, but I think this is a pretty reasonable bill. It doesn't define how business owners have to ensure customer safety, so those owners would have any pick of their options. And of course, critics will say that you can't hold others accountable for the bad actions of another person, which is the same argument that gun owners give when defending our rights. Imagine that. But, for example, people put the onus on the school when incidents happen at schools, or at least they put some of it. So I don't see why this would be any different. Of course, guns get blamed first, but then there are always the questions of school security, locks, police response, etc. If you can sue McDonald's for giving you coffee that's too hot, then you should also be able to sue them if you get robbed or attacked while being forced to leave your first and best line of defense at the door. It's simply an extension of that logic. If you're telling me that I can't defend myself on premises, it's because you are providing those safety measures yourself. And if not, then they better hope that nothing bad ever happens and that their insurance policy covers random acts of violence. Now, I fully believe that people can choose what they want to do with their private property, even if I don't agree with those choices. Private property is the very foundation of liberty. It also means that people aren't free from the consequences of those choices, and it's worth noting that the right to defend oneself is the only right that is regularly restricted, and yet the most crucial to life and limb. And this is a good way to try and mitigate that. I think that this could set a good precedent for other states to try and adopt. And typically, like I said, you will never hear me say government should pass a law, because I'm a libertarian and we don't work like that. But this one spells out what is already naturally implied and might at least make people think long and hard before restricting someone's right to defend their life and property. So I will be keeping an eye on this one in Georgia, and maybe up here next door in South Carolina, we can take a look at it too. That would be fabulous. Not that there's a lot of places here that restrict your right to carry. Actually, very surprised that there's no signage at the local mall. Actually, did not see that one coming. But there are a few places, even if they are few and far between. Like I said, I will be keeping an eye on this one and bring you any appropriate updates. As always, you guys know the drill. For the algorithm, like, share, and subscribe. If you are new here, ring that notification bell, because lately I have been on fire and we've been doing 3 or 4 videos a week over here, me and Liberty Toddler. Even though you don't see her, she's lurking, I promise. And as always, thanks for tuning in and happy shooting.